Okay, I'll call this Avon Board of Education meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. Thank you. And as you know, in an election year, I, as the superintendent, have to start this first official board meeting with our new members in lieu of having officers elected. But we start tonight with officer elections for our Avon Board of Education chair. Do we have any nominations for Board of Education chair?
Yes, I do. May I speak? Okay. Yes, I'd like to make a motion to nominate Deborah Shute as our chair. I think she's done a fantastic job. And I'm hoping that we can vote on that, if there's a second.
I will second that nomination.
Thank you. And for the record, also, roll call. Let it be known that all 9 members are present. Christine, for the record. And so we have a first by Lynn Katz and a second by Jeffrey Fleischman to nominate Deborah Shute as Board of Education chair. I call a vote, please, on the motion.
Aye.
Aye.
And again, for the record, that is 9 votes unanimous for Ms. Deborah Shute as our Board of Education chair. And congratulations again, Deb. Looking forward to working with you, continuing to work with you. And I'll let you run the meeting the rest of the time the way you normally run it. You can do the mission statement.
Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate that. I do enjoy doing this role with you and for you. And so I do consider it a privilege, and I'm happy to take it on. Do you feel like the roll call is fine the way it was, Bridget, or should I actually do name?
We're okay because
You're
we're
good with that.
all on camera on screen also, so there's no issue.
Okay, perfect. So I am happy to continue on with our board officer elections, and I would ask for a nomination for our vice chair.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Thage Singh.
Thank you, Sarah. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Nicole. All in favor? Aye. That passes unanimously. Congratulations, Thage.
Thank you, everyone.
Excellent. And now I will look for a motion for our secretary of the board.
I'd like to nominate Jeffrey Fleischman.
Thank you, Nicole, and I will second that. Do I have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Again, congratulations, Jeff. It's nice to be able to work with you again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, so now let's go for the Pledge of Allegiance. If it's awkward for all of the mics to be on, you can just listen to my voice if you would like. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. All right, I do like to start our meetings with the mission statement. It reminds us all of the work that we do together. Our mission is to inspire in each student a joy and passion for learning and a commitment to excellence, personal integrity, and social responsibility. I always find this to be the perfect segue. I'm excited that we do have a student with us this evening that we want to recognize, and I'm very excited to hear her poem, actually. So before we have Amelia just talk to us, I'm going to have Ms. Wallace introduce her formally as one of her students from the middle school.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Amelia. I'm trying to see you on my screen. There you are. Good evening. I almost said good morning, but that's for tomorrow. So I have the pleasure tonight of introducing Amelia Chimalapati. She is in 8th grade at Avon Middle School. And as you know, she's been selected as the middle school student winner of the 2023 #LowCoolGov scholarship this year. So as part of this honor, Amelia was invited to receive a scholarship of $1,000 in person at the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities Annual Convention Awards Dinner and Reception. This happened back in November, and Amelia attended with mom and dad and sent us along some wonderful photos of the event. Amelia is no stranger to winning writing competitions. Last year, she submitted an entry to the Connecticut Student Writers Contest and earned a platinum award for her poem, Beyond the Night Sky. I had a chance to sit with Amelia and her Emerald Team teachers last year to celebrate that recognition. It would be an understatement to say that Amelia does not like the spotlight, so I'm really excited that you're here with us tonight to share your poem. As you hear Amelia speak in a few minutes, she just has a way with words that really just makes you stop in your tracks. Between her vocabulary, her use of imagery, and her passion for the written word is just indescribable. In the classroom, she's a student who just always does the right thing simply because it's the right thing. She's kind, she does not seek out the spotlight, and is one of the hardest working students I think I've met. I'm thrilled that she agreed to read her poem for us tonight. And I also want to recognize Amelia's mom and dad, who I'm sure are somewhere in the background there, who are wonderful partners to us here at AMS. So without further ado, Amelia, you're the star of the show, much more than my introduction.
Thank you. My poem's titled Making It Happen, Our Town's Rock Stars. In the heart of our hood where dreams take flight, local govs the crew making everything right. Fixing up the block, making it all shine. They're like the cool squad on cloud 9. Watching the roads, fixing up the view, smooth paths and walkways, no need to boo. From the traffic's jam to the sidewalk scare, local govs vibe showing us they're there. Making things fair, making things true, they're like the laws fam looking out for you. From courts to cops, keeping us real, local gov's a reason we can heal. To school and beyond, they're all about the dream, helping us grow, making a cool team. From class to clubs, they light the way, local gov's there, brightening our day. Celebrating our mix, making us all feel, with parties and shows, they've got the deal. From events to gigs, they bring out the cheer, local gov spirit, making life clear. Listening to us, they got an open ear, taking our worries, wiping every tear. At meetings and talks, they're our voice. Local gov's the reason we got our choice. When things get tough, they're there in a flash, helping us out with a secret stash. From rough times to lending a hand, local gov's there, branding some grand. So cheers to the talent and the cool things they do. Local gov's the reason we all make it through. With everyone together in a chill space, local gov's the reason our town's an awesome place.
All right, before I say, yes, round of applause. Oh my goodness. That is the town that I want to live in, Amelia. Thank you so much. That is amazing. And you wrote so much about it. It's really, I'm impressed beyond belief. And I'm so proud of you for coming and doing this on screen. I know that's got to be a little more awkward, but you handled your Zoom very well. You unmuted yourself. You have no issues like the adults do sometimes. So I can see why Ms. Wallace is incredibly fond of you. You did a wonderful job, and I hope your parents are there and listening to this. We are very proud of you. You definitely deserve to win this award, and we are so thrilled that you joined us. I know you already had to read it for the town council as well, so we were just grateful that you made time for us too. So another round of applause for Amelia.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, honey. I'm looking forward to what you do in the future. You're just getting started. So that's fantastic. So what I will say at this time is, Amelia, if you'd like to leave this meeting with your parents, nobody's going to take offense. This is an opportunity for you to enjoy the rest of your evening. We are so grateful that you took the time to be with us now.
Thank you.
Thank you, honey. Have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. See you soon.
Bye.
So I was so excited. I jumped over a part of the agenda. I hope you guys will forgive me if we can go back for a second. It's going to be really brief, but I forgot to talk about committee assignments because that is something we have to do at the beginning of our term as well. So I'm just going to speak to it briefly. I've already had the benefit of speaking with all of you beforehand. So this is just the part of the meeting where I call attention to it. So we do have 4 different committees on the Board of Ed for anybody who's unaware. They are policy, finance, curriculum and professional practices, and negotiations. I do need 4 board members on each of those committees. And so since we aren't in person, normally I would ask you to write on a piece of paper what your preferences are. If you wouldn't mind emailing me with those preferences and give me a couple of days, I will get back to you with what your assignments will be, including who the chairs will be as well. And that way we'll get started and we'll be able to work together in that capacity. I do also have 1 liaison that we would like to fill for our CREC position. So if you are interested in that, please fill that out. At this time, I believe we've got Mr. Campbell that's willing to do that for us, but certainly let me know. And I'll again include that in the email to all of you in a couple of days. So if you guys are comfortable, sorry about that. I did that out of order, but Amelia probably didn't need to hear that anyway. So I think we're all
Started
good.
that trend tonight, so I think that's
Little like it's all good. I think we're in sync now. I think we're
one
good.
time a year you leave the meeting to me and I botch it up.
Nope, we're running strong. This is good. So now after having that lovely presentation, we do move on to the business of the meeting, and we have 3 different meeting minutes that we need to address. So I am looking for a motion to approve the Board of Education special budget meeting minutes of December 19th, 2023.
So moved.
Thank you, Sarah. Do I have a second?
I'll
I'll second.
second it.
Oh, okay. I'll take Jeff this time, but there's plenty more, Thage, so hang on there. All in favor? Aye. Okay, looks like that passes unanimously. No one was opposed, correct? Okay, passes unanimously. The next one is there is an amendment that has been shared on this regarding the Board of Education regular monthly meeting minutes of December 19th, 2023. It's a wording issue. I don't know. It was Lynn, you had made a suggestion if you wanted to speak to that.
Oh, okay. I I don't have the wording that it's supposed to be. I have the wording, it's on page 4 of those minutes. The top of the page where it says Mrs. Katz asked if it was specifically the workshop model, that beginning of that, those 3 lines. And I confirm with Mr. G what the intent of that discussion was. And I don't know if I don't have it in front of me, but you changed you modified the wording so that it seemed to be more accurate.
Yes, Christine, you have it in front of you too? Why don't you? Christine
I
has
don't have
it.
it in front of me.
Christine has it modified already, so she can read it and we can vote on that
Okay, thank you.
modification.
So on the page 4, the new wording will say, Mr. Giannini answered that we use the latest updated version of the Teachers College Units of Study. However, the state reviewed the previous edition when making their decision to approve the curriculum.
Thank
It
you
was
for
a wording that made
a little bit clearer. Yep. No, that's why we have the vote. Is there any other suggestions about this particular set of meeting minutes?
One more thing, and I'm sorry, Christine, because I didn't realize it before the meeting myself, or I would have said it earlier. We just need to change the title for Mr. Medic in one spot. I think it's because his placard wasn't correct last time something happened, but we'll fix that. We'll make that correction too.
Okay,
Right.
sure.
Excellent. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes with the suggested edits?
So moved.
Thank you, Lynn. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
All right, I heard Sarah's voice, so I will take Sarah. All in favor? Aye. I count 9 hands. That passes unanimously as well. Thank you very much. All right, lastly is a motion to approve the Board of Education special budget workshop meeting minutes of January 10th, 2024. Do I have a motion to approve those?
So moved, Deb.
All right, thank you, Thage. Do I have a second? Nicole, thank you very much. All in favor? Aye. I see 9 hands, passes unanimously again. Thank you very much. So this next section, I'm not sure if we have anybody from the public, but if someone would like to make public comment, it's a little different when we're virtual. I just ask that you type your name into the chat room with your address for Ms. Sardinskis, and she'll let us know in the order that people sign up. Not knowing if we have extra people in the audience, Christine, I'll give it a minute unless you can tell that we don't.
We do, but I have no one is chatting me right now.
Okay, we do have a second opportunity if that should arise, and we'll keep an eye on it. And now that you know that's how to do it, at any point, certainly you can add your name to the chat. So we'll move forward with items of information and proposals. Do we have our students, Lillian and Nick, with us this evening?
So we do not have Nikolai, and Lillian has lost her voice.
Oh, okay.
And so she sent me her update.
How do you feel about reading it, Christine?
Okay. Okay, here we go. You can all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Avon High School, midterm season, which means semester 2 is starting. PTO has allocated funding to multiple clubs. We've also gotten new couches in the lobby, which people have been using. Model UN went well. Mock trial made it to the playoff rounds. Intramural basketball just had their first games on Friday. Great turnout from the students. Winter concerts went great, and MMS had a half-day concert that was streamed to all the school districts. Abrahamic bus ride with Mr. Stuart Abrams on MLK Day, and Literary Arts Club is hosting an open mic night on January 26th. Avon Middle School. Beloved paraeducator Linda Hatchkiss has retired as of 12/22/23 after over 30 years of dedicated service to the children of Avon. Linda will be stepping down at the end of the school year to embark on a new adventure, retirement. The Student Council PJ Day was a huge success. $630 was raised and will be donated to the Connecticut Children's Foundation. A chapter of Steel City Codes has been established at AMS. It's a nonprofit organization that promotes inclusivity in computer science for grades 7 and 8. Thompson Brook School, Pajama Day went successfully. Everyone's looking forward to winter concerts. That seems to be all I have from her right now.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you to Lily, and I think she is with us even though she's lost her voice. So thank you for preparing that for us. That just speaks to how reliable you are in this role. And so we are definitely appreciative of that. And we'll hear from Nick the next time. For the administrators that are here for your benefit, we are fortunate as a board to receive all of your newsletters. So thank you for writing them. And we enjoy hearing what's going on in each of your buildings through that communication as well. You do it so well. They're really fun to read. So we are staying apprised of all the good stuff going on in district, and we look forward to that. So just want you to know that we are staying aware of all the good stuff that you guys bring to our students. So thank you for that. And as far as the financial report, do we have one tonight, Susan?
Good evening. No, we do not have a financial report.
Thank you very much. All
Thanks.
right. So next, this will be very brief because we don't have any official members of committees or liaisons at this point. So we will just move through and get to the chair report. So I will take this opportunity, since I didn't get to officially welcome our newest board members. So I have Suzanne Zakaris here, and I have Chris Campbell and Ramesh Katapilli. And I wanted to congratulate all of you for your winning in the election, as well as getting Nicole back. We're very grateful to have you on our team still. I think we've got a great board, and I'm very excited to work with all of you. So thank you for putting your hat in the ring. And I think that the students are going to have great results from this partnership that we're all enjoying together. I also want to take another opportunity, knowing that we're talking about the budget again tonight, to say how impressed I am. Just every single year, it seems to just get better and better in terms of how well you present this information, how well you know this information, regardless of what questions might have been raised. You flawlessly know the answer without having to do much work to retrieve it. You just have worked with it so intimately that this really has been your budget. And tonight, with a vote, it'll become our budget. But I just want to acknowledge that we know how much time and effort goes into it from everybody that's at this meeting tonight. So all of our administrators, we know how hard you work with your buildings to really put together actual requests for what our students would best need from us. And you are just so helpful in all of those requests that you're asked to do. And I just know, having been on the board long enough, how much effort and how much heart goes into that, and how it can be difficult sometimes to maybe take something out in order to put something else in. So just know that we acknowledge that effort, and we are very grateful for it. And I am looking forward to moving forward another budget that will be a success for our students in the district. So I will keep it brief with that. I know this is an adventure doing this virtually again with our monthly meeting. So thank you for taking the time to do this with us. I think it was the right call, just for the sake of everybody's safety on the roads. So thank you, Dr. Carnamola. We made the decision this afternoon, and I think this is the way to go. So thanks for being flexible with us about that. And I'm grateful, honestly, that we're able to do it this way. This is an option. Otherwise, we would have had to reschedule. So I'm glad we can still get the business moving forward and help Dr. Carnamola with all the initiatives that she is steering. So I will move on now to Dr. Carnamola for your superintendent's report.
Thank you. And I just, as we get started, before I turn this quickly to Mr. Medic for the hiring report, I want to thank you, Lillian, also for being here. Even though you're not feeling 100%, I just wanted to point out, I believe today is Nick's birthday, and he's with his family Although, of course, everyone loves to spend their birthday with us at these meetings, I think we understand Nick not being with us, wanted to wish him a happy birthday. Thank you. And I'll pause there and go ahead, Mr. Medic, with our hiring report.
Good evening, everyone. As you can see from the hiring report, we've continued to fill vacancies in our non-certified positions, particularly paraeducators and interim custodians. We also have been able to hire 2 long-term substitutes to cover various medical leaves for permanent employees. Excuse me, and those individuals either started with us just after their return from winter break or will be joining us in the next few weeks. And that's it for the hiring report tonight.
Thank you. Moving on to the enrollment report. Just up a few more students from last month and from the same time last year. We're up 8 students and holding steady. We'll talk a little bit more about kindergarten enrollment and survey that we are working through for that a little bit later tonight. Any questions about that? Okay, we'll keep moving then. Christine? Under my strategic plan update, most of that is contained within the budget presentation this evening and as a result of the budget workshops that we've been doing. So I will not get into too much else there and take up the time with that tonight. However, we did want to be able to talk a little bit about, as I said, where we are with the new legislation related to kindergarten entry age. And Mr. Giannini put together a few slides to help walk through what that looks like and our district's work to respond to the changes in the legislation. Just an update around where we are right now before we move forward with some additional work and information being communicated out to families on the 1st. So I'll turn it to you, Jess.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Tonight we are providing an update regarding that change to the kindergarten entry age. Previously, children who turned 5 by January 1st of any given school year were automatically eligible for enrollment in that fall. But beginning next year, the eligibility date requires that children turn 5 by September 1st to be automatically enrolled. In addition to this, the new legislation also provides the opportunity for parents to request early entry for their child. The district can consider enrolling that child as long as the parent makes a written request to the school and the school conducts an assessment of the child to ensure that they are developmentally ready for kindergarten. A term that might be a good one to know, something that we've talked a lot about this year, is the term burr baby. And so that's referring to any child who's born in September, October, November, December. And that's really the children that this legislation will impact because they're typically children who would have been enrolled automatically and now with this change would be potentially impacted in the coming year. So we begin with how Avon supports the transition to kindergarten. Welcoming new families and their children is not a new practice for us. Each spring, we hold open houses that focus on ways families can support their child as they get ready for kindergarten. And we hold what's affectionately become known as story time, which is kind of like a meet and greet, but it's an opportunity for students and their families to come to the school. We talk with the parents, and our staff works directly with our incoming kindergartners, and they complete some school-like activities which help us prepare for our new students, but also to build balanced classrooms for the fall. These practices will remain the same, but we'll be adding some new steps for families who have some of those burr babies and are interested in joining us in September. So why the change? Next slide, Christine. So as mentioned earlier, Connecticut legislation changed this past summer in terms of children who'd be automatically eligible for kindergarten. Prior to this change, Connecticut had one of the youngest school entry ages in the country. In fact, currently there's only 7 states with a birth date requirement for children that goes beyond September 1st. And 5 of those 7 states have September birthdays as well. They just happen to be later in the month, and 2 have October birthdays. There's also 12 states that have birthdays far beyond, so they may be in July or August as cutoff dates for kindergarten eligibility each year. The state, in terms of the information they sent out, cited more rigorous academic expectations in recent years, as well as developmental differences between a typical 4 and 5-year-old as the primary reason that this change was lobbied for. For us here in Avon, we're taking this opportunity to partner with our families and provide them with additional information. After all, it's really not uncommon for families to approach us regarding younger children and their readiness for kindergarten. I know I fielded several questions myself through the years. I'm sure Amy and Susan and Noam could attest to getting phone calls each year from parents who are just not sure and have questions for us about their child's readiness. So I'm going to pause there and just see if there's any questions before I move on to the next slide.
Jess, I have a question. So if any kids are in pre-K right now, and if they fall in October to December months, are they not automatically enrolled into kindergarten? What are the
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So any child who's enrolled in preschool right now, unless they have a birth date that falls on September 1st or before that date, they would not be automatically eligible for kindergarten in the fall, even if they attended preschool. And that includes our own preschool. So we'll have to follow a similar process with our 4-year-olds who are in attendance with us currently.
Okay.
Good
I
question.
did see Lynn as well.
Okay, this is all new, so I'm not sure even if my questions can be answered at this point, but how is this new law, how do you foresee this new law impacting the size of classrooms? I would think there'd be fewer classrooms, maybe, I don't know. And also, if a burr baby, I never heard that, I love it, is deemed not developmentally ready for kindergarten, what could a parent do to, if he or she disagrees with that assessment?
Sure. So the first question about enrollment and classes, numbers of sections, I think will kind of be answered as we go through the next few slides. When you see, I'm going to share with you some of the responses we received so far, as well as some data that we've looked at as a district, which is leading us to believe we won't see a major change. Of course, no crystal ball here, but based on everything we're looking at currently. And then the second part of that question is an interesting one that we're curious to explore this spring, because in talking with families about a child not being developmentally appropriate for kindergarten, it also could bring up other questions about things that might be going on with that child. And so we'll plan any families who don't meet that expectation, or their child rather doesn't meet that expectation. We plan to meet with face-to-face, have family meetings, so we can talk about ways we can support families and children who might not have been developmentally ready for kindergarten.
I see Nicole's hand and then Thage.
I have 2 questions. One, our current preschool students, it's always, if my understanding is correct, it's always been a 2-year program. If we have burr babies, can they stay for a 3rd year if they're at the Roaring Brook preschool?
So right now we're leaning towards yes, because obviously the nature of the program and those families have been with us. We're hoping that that's something that would phase out over time, because there will also be an impact if we work backwards to how we're accepting 4-year-olds into the program in the future. And we're really talking about typical peers here, that we would look differently at how we accept them so that we don't create another issue when they turn 5 going into kindergarten, if that makes sense. But we've got a year or 2 to go now, because we have these 4-year-olds who, well, actually just 1 year, because we have the 4-year-olds who are currently with us. Now, some of those families are families that we already know are going to make a request to come to kindergarten, and these are children we know pretty well. And so if there are any unique situations with individual students who are 4 in our preschool now, again, we'll be working with those families on the next best steps.
Okay. And then my second question was, what does the assessment look like? And is there a deadline for parents to request?
Yes,
it?
and I do have answers for those coming up in the next few slides as well.
All right, Paige, does your question seem?
They've been answered. They've been answered. Thank you.
All right,
I
perfect.
have the same ones as Lynn and Nicole, so we're all set.
I see Sarah.
Yes, Jess, this might be answered in the slides to come, but I'm curious what the feedback from the teaching teachers is this something that they think will be a positive change to keep students more on track together, and maybe there won't be as many students who maybe are struggling to keep up? Just curious, any feedback you've heard from teachers?
Sure. I mean, I think what the staff wants is the same thing we all want, which are, children who are ready and are going to be successful in kindergarten. And I think that the real thing they're advocating for, which is really going to be part of our process, is just that we can give families better information about their child's readiness. Because, if we do come across a child who's not ready, then we want to be able to work with that family, explore other options, and point them in the right direction for what's best for their child.
All right, I think that's it for this slide. Okay.
All right, no problem. All right, so next slide, please, Christine. Oh, that's way ahead, but maybe back to slide 5 if we could. All right, well, I'll keep going while we find slide 5, just in the interest of time. But now, to date here in Avon, we did conduct our first preschool census. Families were asked what their plans were for the upcoming school year. We did share the change in the kindergarten entry age with them. We received, during the open window, we did cut it off mid-January, but we received 145 responses. Which we were very pleased with. That's about 70% of a typical incoming class of kindergartners. And of note, of those burr babies, now that you're all familiar with that term, we had 4 families with burr babies who indicated to us in the census that they plan to keep their child home next year, and 22 families who had with burr babies who indicated that they'll request an assessment for early entry into kindergarten. So with those numbers being pretty well represented, we think we'll have a lot of interest in our Avon community here for early entry into kindergarten. And if we consider that we anticipate, many of those families will have children who are ready for kindergarten, that is why, if we go back to that question about perhaps our sections and our need for staffing not changing very much in the coming year, that census was really helpful for us in making that determination. So the next thing we did was form a committee of teachers and administrators, and that group is tasked with reviewing our current practices.
Yep.
Do
you want this one?
Not
this
yet.
is what I have. I feel badly. I don't know.
I'm on slide 5. That's what you have for slide 5. Yep, right there. Avon's response. You're on the right one now. So that committee of teachers is looking at our practices. We plan to still do a story time with those 4-year-olds, but we're also looking at some standardized assessments. And I know there was a question about that. And so currently we are looking at 3 standardized assessments as part of our process. And I want to be clear just that will be part of the process. We'll still be inviting families in to do observations, to get to know the different children and who they are. There'll be family questionnaires. We'll be providing a questionnaire to any preschool staff that might know, or daycare providers who might know the children. So the standardized assessment is one aspect of really looking at the child and who they are holistically in making that determination. The three assessments we're considering at the time are the DIAL, which is the Developmental Indicators for Assessment of Learning, and the ESI, which is the Early Screening Inventory, and the Ages and Stages Developmental Screening Tool. All three of those are nationally normed assessments, which districts look at to make determinations about developmental readiness for children of that age. They're also, they're age ranged, all of them. So regardless of when you assess a child, you can get accurate developmental data. So if we assess a child in March, or we assess a child in April, or May or June for that matter, we compare the results to those nationally normed results for children in that age range. So regardless of when we assess, we should be able to get an accurate picture based on those tools. We actually plan to do some piloting of those assessments with our current preschoolers, so thinking of those 4-year-olds who are with us now, so we can really get some hands-on experience with them and really take a look to see if they're giving us good data and making this determination. And we plan to do that soon in the next 6 weeks, so we'll have this ready to go for March. Any questions about that?
Suzanne?
Yes, we haven't used these assessments before.
We have some experience with the ESI. Our staff is familiar and has utilized that. They're also familiar with the Ages and Stages. The one new one is the DIAL, and that is something that came to our attention through some work collaboratively with other districts, many of whom are considering using it. And we did order a kit for us to take a look at here in district as well.
And who plays a part in doing the assessments?
Good question. That would be our certified staff. So it would be a blend of special educators, school psychologists, social workers, really any of those early childhood educators who are certified could administer one of those assessments.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Sage?
Yes, is the plan to do this every year then for the incoming kindergarten classes?
Yeah, so as long as this remains the guidance from the Connecticut General Assembly, then we would be we would be following the same process. It is new to us this year, so we plan to take a look at it this spring after we've completed at least one round, and if we need to make adjustments in the future, then we will, but generally speaking, that practice would stay in place each year. So in recognizing that this could all be a little bit confusing for our families, we do plan to have some information sessions coming up in January, the 24th, 25th, and 26th. The other thing that census did was give us the email addresses of all of those families so we can contact them directly. There'll also be information going out in a letter to families this week about our registration process. And we're updating our website as well, so families have easy access to all of this information. And then finally, we have that draft plan in place, which you could call up now, Christine, and the next two slides show our plan and our timeline. As you can see here in this slide, the plan will really look the same for children who turn 5 by September 1st. They'll come to our story time, get to know the staff, and they'll receive their teacher assignment in August. The change would really be for those Burr babies. Their families would submit that written request to us, which will take place through a Google form, and then they will come to one of our screenings in March, where we'll conduct some more formal screenings to determine the child's readiness for kindergarten. And again, we do plan to meet with any families if we do come across a child who we do not recommend for kindergarten in the fall, to discuss next steps. The next slide shows the timeline. And as you can see, it's pretty aggressive in terms of turning this around in the next couple of months. And the reason for that is some of you may know, it's pretty competitive to get children on daycare lists, into magnet preschools, into private preschools. And so we want to move quickly enough that if we do come across families and kindergarten is not right for their child next year, that they have time to sign up and get their children's name on other lists. And so we want to move quickly. Of course, we recognize that families will continue to register after March, and we'll have to, revisit this process later in the spring for any families who do. Any questions about those two pieces, about the plan or the timeline?
Sage.
With the timeline, Jess, is there any opportunity for families moving into town to be able to be screened if they feel that their child is eligible for kindergarten?
Yep, absolutely. So families come in after March. What we'll likely do is select another date later in the spring when we can do another round of those screenings and have families come in to make that determination. We don't want to wait too long for the same reason, simply that we want to be able to get back to these families. So if kindergarten is not right for their child in the fall, that they can make other decisions.
So family moving in, say like July, wouldn't have this opportunity just because of time and.
No, I wouldn't say that. I think we'll probably be doing this in the summer, setting up dates with families who move in. A couple of interesting things of note. I mean, this is obviously something that's been shared out across the state. If you take a look at many other districts and their websites and information that they're sharing, it's very similar to what we are as well. And going back to that piece where Connecticut was really, one of the later states in terms of birth dates. So we're somewhat confident that families moving in, especially from New England, but definitely from really across the country, that this wouldn't necessarily be news to a lot of families, that they're used to those earlier cutoff dates. But absolutely, if we have families moving in anytime after these March dates, we'll work with them to do a screening as well.
Great. And do we know how this is going to impact applications to the choice program? And how would that work if we get a student that is not off the age or?
Great question. So Choice CREC has given us the guidance that each district should follow the same process that they have in place for their resident students. And so we would have to work directly with those families to set up a date if any of them happen to have birthdays after September 1st. We've been thinking about how to go about that for a couple of reasons. One, the timeline's a little bit later with CREC. CREC is considering your application for participation in the choice program as your written request. And then we also want to be mindful about meeting these families and their children. Bringing a 4-year-old to Avon at the end of the day for a screening might not be the most opportune time to do so. So we're thinking through that. Once we've completed the lottery and we can talk to those families, we'll find a time to meet with them if necessary and do the same screening we do with our Avon families.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Got it.
I saw Chris and then Sarah.
Yeah. So if there was a student that did 2 years at Bolingbrook and needed a 3rd year, are the tuition costs going to remain the same?
They would, although I don't want to say that 100% yet, Chris, because again, we're not sure of how many families are going to be impacted by this. And then what does it mean for those 4-year-olds who've been with us for 2 years and we're saying they're not developmentally ready for kindergarten? Because we have 2 groups of students in the pre-K program. We have our typical peers, and then we have our students with IEPs. So I don't want to lump them into the same group because, obviously different needs there, and we're going to want to work with those families, separately in terms of their child's needs.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah?
I think this is all great. So thanks, Jess, for being patient with all of our questions.
No, there's a lot to digest. Yep.
Thage's question sparked something in me. Is there an opportunity or consideration for the choice students to have assessments in I'm assuming many are coming from Hartford, but in Hartford versus coming to Avon?
Yeah, that's what we were thinking, because, for that same reason, to ask them to come out to Avon for that assessment. It's also maybe not the most natural, comfortable environment, and your first, introduction to us is coming to take an assessment. Although these screeners that you do with children of that age feel like games, but it's still a screening. And so that is something that we're seriously considering, is going to them for that. It's a
Great.
smaller group than it's been in the past. We've made some changes in terms of seating allocations in our preschool and our kindergarten so that we can avoid families starting with us in preschool and then having to shift to another elementary school after just 1 year. So it would be roughly 6 students that we'd be opening seats for in kindergarten next year. So it's a small group.
Thank you.
So with all this occurring, we did decide to take a look at some assessment data. It's important to note that this is just academic data, which is of course just one indicator of success and why our screening process will really look more holistically at a child's development. That said, it was interesting to take a look and see how our students fared over time. And so what this you see on this first slide here, we did a 5-year look back, separating out students, and this is from the Smarter Balance state assessment. We did also look internally at some of our assessments like the Ames Web and some other curriculum assessments that we give. But this is a 5-year look back at the Smarter Balance, the SBA assessment. And the categories you see there in blue are those Burr babies. I'm glad we know that term now. It makes this easier than saying the dates. The red are children who came in as 5-year-olds in September and would have been 5 most of the year. And then in green, you see children who would have come in as a 6-year-old. No scores repeated there, so they're all their own category. And interestingly enough, we found several occasions in looking at this data that some of our youngest students were also some of our top performers. Again, it's just one indicator. I think it's important that each community do this. And speaking with some colleagues, we know that not everyone's data looks the same. In fact, if you were to look at similar data from a state level, you'd likely see a difference with older students outperforming younger students. But again, this is one of those times when leaving it up to the local control is a good thing because our data tells a different story. Again, it's just one indicator. We'll certainly be looking at others, but it was interesting to know. We did look for some cohort data. If you go to the next slide there, Christine. Unfortunately, with COVID, it was hard to get good cohort data because there were some years in the middle where we did not give standardized assessments because of COVID. But this was one good piece that showed that cohort that did take the assessment in 3rd grade and then in 8th grade. And you can see even as 8th graders, some of those Burr babies continued to score very well on those standardized assessments. As we can get more consistency back with our testing, we'll certainly continue to look at this cohort data over time. Any questions about that?
That is so interesting, that data. I wonder if it's partially because parents know their kids aren't ready to push them on to kindergarten, that they might have some learning delays or something early on.
Sure.
Really
I did
interesting.
see Ramesh's hand as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. I think there's a lot of information here, right? So I think we have our plans in place as well. But my question is, right, as we are getting the timeline earlier, right, instead of January 1st to September 1st cutoff, right? So, and talking about earlier, right, the pre-K influx of students and everything, right? So now with this change, will there be additional impact on the pre-K needs because some of the people may not be ready based on the assessment or whatever it is, and therefore they need to be either continued with the pre-K or whatever, right? Like, so what are the impacts we have with the pre-K due to this particular timeline shift?
Sure. Well, right now we're not anticipating a large impact. Again, as we say, our district data tells the story that our 4-year-olds tend to be ready for kindergarten. Those preschool students that we have with us, we know very well. They've been with us for a couple of years now in some cases. And so, we can work directly with those families in terms of making that decision. In our preschool, we open seats for are students who do not have IEPs, do not need specialized services. And so we control the number of seats that we release. And so it may mean that there's a couple of less seats available for typical peers if we had a 4-year-old, for example, who wasn't ready for kindergarten, but could remain with us in preschool. But overall, based on our numbers and what we typically see here, we're not anticipating a large impact. Now, other things can drive changes to preschool, like families moving in, attrition, and so on and so forth. But currently, we're not anticipating a big change.
Yeah, so piggybacking on that, right? So let's say the parents request a district level assessment and the screening of those candidates. And if those turn into an intervention needs, right? So are we saying that, okay, there is still no impact on those things, or because typically they need to be going for kindergarten instead of
Sure.
getting
Well, there's
into
also that's always a possibility. Many 3 and 4-year-olds, with children who parents have questions, do reach out to us kind of prior to this change, and
Okay.
we do have a child find process here for those families. Is it possible that we could come across a child through this that might need specialized instruction? We may have more questions about. Sure, absolutely. And we meet families and children all the time that could be the case.
All right, thank you.
Nicole?
Oh, sorry. Will this impact the Burr babies coming in at 3 years old? If I have an understanding, there are some openings like mid-year, and if a child turns 3 and in one of the Burr months, they were able to come if there was a place, or if they were diagnosed for that, will that affect them? Will they have to wait a year? Because then that's potentially giving them 3 years in our program instead of 2.
Yeah, good question. If you require specialized services, once you turn 3 years old, we become responsible for you, so there'd be no impact. It's possible that at the end of their 4's year in preschool, the family may want to work with us on continued preschool experiences versus kindergarten. That's not uncommon now, so there's always that possibility that would continue. The only change perhaps would be the typical peers and how we accept them. We're seriously considering changing that to having to be 4 by September 1st, so we don't create that problem for you as a family the coming year when you're ready for kindergarten, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time this evening. Yeah, we're looking forward to this. We're hoping to, again, just our goal is to work with families and give them better information regarding those questions that they often have about those Burr babies. So thank you.
Thank you. And that's it for us tonight until we move into the new business.
That was really helpful information. So thank you for providing that to us. And just so the board understands, that was informational. We don't need to take action on any of that. So thank you for being so engaged, though. That was good. So now we don't have anything for the consent calendar tonight. We don't have old business, so we will move right to new business. We held off on holding this particular vote because we wanted to have all of our new board members with us in order to move forward for the rest of the year's committee meeting dates. So we are looking to see if we are comfortable with approving the second half of the year's Board of Ed committee meeting dates. Did everybody have a chance to look over them? Lynn?
Yes, it's my understanding, just to sorry, I'm losing my voice too. Confirm that if one of those dates needs to be changed based on what committees we end up serving on, that's not an issue, right?
Correct. The goal is always to have a quorum, but if it's something that we can't work with, then we can reschedule them. They just become a special meeting after the dates have been submitted to the town.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions about these? All right, seeing none, that I am going to ask for a motion to approve the second half of the year's Board of Ed committee meeting dates. Anyone?
So moved.
So moved.
All right, I'm going to go with Suzanne this time, and I'll have a second by Lynn. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I see passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Start to plug those into your personal calendars. It's helpful. And Christine is always great about putting them in the Google Calendar for us too, so we get those reminders. I will say, if you're new to that process, always accept the dates so that you'll get reminders automatically as well. If you don't click on yes, you'll attend it, then you're not included in that automatic reminder cycle, if that makes sense. Okay, next would be, we are looking at next year's school year calendar, which I will say is early for us. Normally, this is a February vote that we take. So as you can see, again, Dr. Carnamola is moving us along and being very mindful of the schedules that our parents keep as well. And so it's always helpful if we can offer information sooner than later. Dr. Carnamola, did you want to speak to the upcoming school year calendar at all?
Yeah, sure. Christine, maybe it's not the same on your screen right now, but can you put up the calendar that shows the bottom that has the committee meeting dates that they just voted on? They already voted on them, which is fine because they have them on paper. I just kind of wanted to make sure that it was clear what, to the public, what they just voted on, and then put up the school year calendar. I'll just start talking about the school year calendar while Christine is able to. Sometimes it freezes up and what's on your screen is not really what's getting shared. I think that's what she has going on right now. So in terms of next year's school year calendar, as I stated previously, we're not looking for any major changes. As you know, this was the first year that we made some changes, the current year that we are in, some changes to our professional development schedule, looking to utilize some half days for professional development because we were limited in the number of full days that we could have. That has worked very well for us. So we put some of those again into consideration as we are moving forward with next year. We try to be thoughtful about where those are placed because we are looking to have minimal impact on families and classroom time, and at the same time have the greatest impact that we can with the time of year that it is and what kind of professional learning we may need to do, which is why you may see some, more often, for example, in the beginning part of the year. Let me pause a second. Christine, are you having trouble putting it up?
I am. What are you seeing?
The first page of the packet.
It's happening again. All right, hold on. Sorry. It's telling me I'm screen sharing. I'm just gonna go out and do it again.
Okay. So when we're looking at the 24-25 calendar, it looks very much the same as it does this year. That another change that we made, as you know, had to do with the beginning part of the year, the way we started with front loading those days. We added one additional day in the current year that we're in for faculty and staff to be present before students. We're doing the same again. So if you look, we start August 15 and 16, that's new staff orientation. We start with them for 5 days. So they come with us through to the next week. And then on the 22nd, we would have all of our staff return for the 22nd, 23rd, and 26th. And then the 27th, first day of school. Also worked well for us last year, having the 4-day week with students, but the Monday for faculty and staff to be in. Thank you. Let me pause a second. Yes, we are now looking at the current calendar. Can you just go back one page for me? And I'll just rewind 1 second. So for the benefit of anyone who might be watching from the public, if you look under on the bottom half of this grid, policy would be the first meeting in the dates that were just approved by the board. Policy subcommittee would meet on 1:30, on 2/27. I'm sorry, on 2/13, you see that we have 2 meetings. Sometimes you do that when we need them back to back, both a finance and a curriculum professional practices committee. And you can see the rest are self-explanatory there, but that is what the board just voted to approve. And if we need to make changes, then we will. Okay, now fast forward and let's go back to the.
Sorry about that. I didn't know.
That's okay. I had a feeling you didn't know because I knew you wouldn't have left it where it was. So back to, we have the half days of professional development you see in the calendar. We have all of the current holidays. The only piece that was something we had to stop and think about this year, really more than usual, was where the winter break alongside of the contractual and school closure for Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, excuse me, and Christmas Day. So if you look at December next year, It's just the way that it falls. We would normally come into school on the 23rd and have a half day. That's how the calendar usually works. But if you look at this, that would have meant we leave on the 20th, have the weekend off, and then come back on the 23rd for a half day. And just for the sake of knowing that a lot of folks will start to travel, and both families and students and potentially staff, we thought it was a better idea to start the break on the 23rd. So that way Friday would be the last day as the half day. And then, as you know, this is just a projected last day of school as June 10th. Any snow days or other weather closures or closures for any reason would impact that date. But as of right now, that is the date. I'll pause there and see if you have any questions about this.
I don't see any hands.
Occasionally, as we go through the year, we may need to change some things like afternoon, evening conferences too, but we try to stick to what this is and put them out there up front so that people can plan accordingly. Thank you.
All right, excellent. So now I'm looking for a motion to approve our 2024 to 2025 school year calendar.
So moved, Deb.
Thank you, Thage. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jeff. All in favor?
Aye.
And I see 9 hands, passes unanimously. All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on, we are at the point of looking again at the school's budget and hopefully taking action this evening. Dr. Carnemola, did you want to present anything?
Sure, thank you. Christine will pull this up for me, thank you. So as I said in our last budget workshop, we revamp what the presentation looks like and the conversation that we have as a result of each time we meet as a board and board administration and discuss what we need to do. So you'll see it looks a little bit different tonight than it did the last time that we were together. But we'll work through what the changes are, and some of it is just the way that we present the information also to ensure that all of it is concise and accurate for public consumption also. So if you go to the next slide for me, Christine, as we start all things in the district with the mission statement, you heard Deb read this earlier. This is a starting point, a launching point for us in the school budget and district budget process also. Next slide, please. I'll go through these a little bit quickly because all of you certainly know, as the Board of Education and the administrators that are present, what we have done thus far as part of the budget process. We really try to focus on the questions that you see there, the top priorities, and how these budget priorities support our blueprint for focus areas, which is both the district and the Board of Education strategic plan, blueprint for excellence. So as you'll see, we go through tonight, I'll continue to reference back the changes to the budget, how they are related to the blueprint. If you go to the next slide for me, please, Christine. So we talked these through a little bit yesterday in terms of the, I wish it was yesterday, last week in the budget workshop, just some terms that are good to know as we move forward, things that we see a lot of questions about as we go through the process. 2 big ones, the gross budget versus the net budget. And while we present both so that it's clear what both lines are, the gross budget is the overarching budget that we request from the town, and the net budget is what the actual impact of the increase is, less revenues, non-tax revenues. Go to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. So just a reminder, we have 4 areas in our blueprint for excellence: student learning, which, as I like to say, is number 1 because it's what we're in the business of doing. Personal growth and relationships, directly tied, of course, to that. Next slide, please. And the last 2, we have communication and partnerships and systems. All of these woven together, hard to separate out. You could argue that just about everything that we talk about in relation to both the strategic plan and the budget has fingerprints in each one of these areas, but we look to categorize them into an overarching picture to make it clear where we are focused on expenditures and revenues, because we think it's important to be able to, as the saying goes, you put your money where your mouth is. I think it's important for the board, us as a school district and the public to understand the ways in which we are very thoughtful in allocating our funds to support our strategic plan. You go to the next page for me, please. Thank you. This is just the big picture, and we'll revisit this again at the end. So you see our gross budget for the previous year, and then the net budget. You see the non-tax revenue that was offset from the budget. And when you compare that to what we are proposing this year, we are looking at a 5.06 gross increase, and which brings us to a 4.97% overall net increase. Just going to pause for a second and mention that, as you know, we engage in zero-based budgeting, line by line, painstakingly line by line. The board did it alongside of me and us for the last about 6 to 8 weeks. We work very hard every year with a goal in mind that, if, of course, the ideal is that we don't cost any additional funds every year. That's a pie in the sky ideal, because we're all living through inflation ourselves as private citizens, and it's not really been any different for us, clearly, as a municipality or a school district. So as we move forward, we worked really hard at keeping this where it is, even though it certainly is a higher increase than we typically present or want to present. But you'll see again as we go through tonight that we are very thoughtful about the fact that we need everything that we have brought forward. If you could go to the next slide for me, please, Christine. Thank you. This is just another way of looking at it. The total gross budget again being $70,122,089. You see, as I spoke to you about in the workshop, our salaries and benefits hovering around 80%. You see that number looks a tiny bit different than it did when we met at the workshop. That is because, as we'll talk about a little bit later, we did work in the salary for another custodian into this line, which changed that percentage just a tad. But again, we'll talk about it later. We looked to offset that, but still, that's why that percentage looks different. So this, I think, gives you a big picture overview of where the money goes. And as you would expect, it's a school district. What do we need most is people. People to work with the students, teaching the students, nurses, custodians, administrative assistants, security. The majority of our budget every year will be salaries and benefits, and that is the norm for a school district. And as I think I mentioned last time, and again, around 80% is what you see as the norm for percentage of an overall budget that a school district has in salaries. Go to the next slide for me, please. And pardon me, because I'm also toggling back and forth between two devices. So when I'm not looking at you, it's because I'm also making sure I'm in the right spot on my own notes. This is another way to just look at it. Summary of the budget increases. You see salary and benefits, 86.93%. Again, that's of the increase, not of the total budget. And that's, as we'll talk about, not as a result of simply wages, increases to wages. It's also increases of people that have been necessary, and of course the insurance increases that we will talk about. And again, this represents, you see on the bottom, the gross increase of 5.06. Next slide, please, Christine. Again, just another way I think is for the visual learner there, way to see the percentage of the drivers. So this is what is driving the increases. 86.93% of that is related to salary and benefits, that overall increase. And then the list down, we'll talk more about each one of those categories as we move on. One more slide for me, please, Christine. Thank you. So we talked quite a bit about the working definition of fixed costs and how we were defining it in terms of this budget. One would argue there can be different variations of what fixed cost definition is. Utilities, for example, to some degree, certainly we could consider fixed costs also. I am not suggesting that these are the only fixed costs in this budget. I just am putting it in a way that I think shows where we, for lack of a better way of saying it, came out of the gate with this budget in terms of fixed costs. The health insurance that we were quoted is an increase, significant increase, as you already know, 14.2%. All other benefits have also risen. Those are two that we don't have much control over, hence referring to them as a fixed cost. Yes, we negotiate contracts and so on related to premiums that employees pay, but this insurance, what's driving this is not necessarily about that, and we'll get a little bit more into that as we move on. These are just the big picture budget drivers. Out of the gate, so to speak, with just what's in front of you on the screen, we were at a 2.74% increase over last year. Go to the next slide for me, please, Christine. So that's where we started from, knowing that we had those increases, but we wanted to continue to work toward our budget goals related to the blueprint and assessing our student needs, our faculty and staff needs, our family needs, and tying what is in this budget, whether it was a reduction, a reallocation, or an addition, back to the goals related to our strategic plan. Of course, we're looking to continue to make progress, maintain the current programming we have that meets student needs, and as always, to create a fiscally responsible budget. We've worked very hard at creating budgets that make use of as much grant funding as possible, while at the same time not creating a fiscal cliff in the coming year. And we've worked to do that again this year. Next slide, please, Christine. So just a different way of looking at this from the way we were talking about it in the last workshops, tying what we are doing back to the focus areas. So of course, focus area 1, student learning, we're talking about the salaries. Preschool teacher is an addition in this budget. You see it says maintain. That's because this section has been added, as we, I think, even discussed a bit earlier. And we know we are going to need to maintain that. In adding that one preschool section, that's one teacher, that's 2 paraeducators. And in addition, in the current year, the one we are living in right now, we have had to add in 5 full-time paraeducators over and beyond the budget that was approved from the previous year, and 7 teaching assistants. And that's due to both the enrollment and the additional students in our younger grades, particularly in kindergarten, and changes in needs. Paraeducators being added in is directly related to students who have needs for one-to-one paraeducators that have presented themselves after the last budget was passed. So the net cost in this budget to us for these items related to student learning is $486,042, or 0.73% of that increase, of that 5.06 increase. Next slide, please, Christine. Thank you. Moving on, you saw some of this already on the other sheet, just breaking it out for you and how it's directly tied back. Special education tuition, you saw that on the fixed cost being a significant increase. That is for our students who require special education programs outside of district. And also we have a significant increase in our contracted services. These are any services, in general, contracted services, or any services that we might pay for from individuals or organizations or companies that are not employees. So we do as much as we can with our own individuals inside, and here and there, we still need to contract services for very specific student needs. An example of that, I think I gave also at the budget workshop, could be, for example, if we had a student who needed a one-to-one nurse and while at school all day or parts of the day, and we did not have a nurse to be able to fulfill that, we would contract services for that. That's a good example of a special education contracted service. These 2 areas alone represent a net cost to us of $175,685, or 0.26% of that net increase, that 4.97. And it just occurred to me that on the previous slide, I said to the gross increase. These are all net increases that we are looking at here. Just want to make sure I'm consistent in the terminology. I apologize. Pause after this one for a second, see if you have any questions so far. I don't think this is anything different than what we've talked about in workshops, but just want to make sure as I keep moving. Also related to student learning, this is another pre-K section. So to be clear, remember in the previous budget year, we had used IDEA, which is federal grant funding, to add in another pre-K section that was necessary. And so that was in the budget for the 23-24 school year. We are maintaining it in the 24-25 school year. So note, this means we had added one section that's completely grant funded. That's what you're looking at here. This is no impact to the general fund, but I wanted to bring it out at any rate, because I think it's important. We did talk about it in the previous budget year. Wanted to refresh your memory, let you know it's still here. It is still being grant funded as one of the pre-K sections. I think that in future years, as the dollar amounts that we are spending in the IDEA grant creep up with salaries, it may be another time that we are talking about the need to reduce some of what's in the grant and take it back into the local budget. I can't tell you that for certain right now, but part of that depends on what the federal government allocates to that IDEA grant and whether or not we continue to receive the amount of funding that we will be able to keep the salaries of these individuals in that grant. Any questions so far?
I do, Jeffrey.
I thought I saw your hand up. I paused again. Go ahead.
On this point in particular, besides the teacher salary, if it gets to be cost prohibitive to put the teacher salary in there, what else can we use that grant on? What are the types of things we can use it for that we may be able to offset on other ends of the future budgets?
Generally speaking, it has to be something that's new that you didn't already have in the budget. So that's kind of contingency number one. We can move salaries off of it. And then, so for example, let's say we needed another position that we don't have in the district right now related to special education. We would be able to put that in the grant. Some types of equipment, special education costs that we are not subverting our own budget with, basically is the rule. So we can't later on say, suddenly this thing that we've already had for all of these years, whether it's a salary or a program or the like, and turn around and put it into the budget, the IDEA grant, when it was not there. But we can do portions of salaries, Jeff.
Okay, so
we
right, so
might,
now
for
I'm
example, if we go over the limit, for example, let's say we start to go over the limit, then a portion of a person's salary would be there and the rest of it might be picked up by the district. If they were already on the grant.
The catches has to be new. So the idea that we're saying this is additional sections added, that's 20, but these aren't next year, aren't additional though, right? This maintaining.
This is maintaining. That's right.
Yes.
This is maintaining. We're able to do that. If we take this off, we're not putting the same people back on.
Gotcha. So as long as the people stay the same that went initially with the grant, we can maintain those additional people.
Are qualified as positions.
So, yes, I was just going to say, qualify that a bit, Susan. Yes.
Yeah, so it's positions, Jeff. So the federal grants outline that we can't supplant. We can only supplement.
I use subvert. It's supplant. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the supplement is some of these positions we added in one special ed teacher years ago, an additional 0.5 BCBA. Some of the other positions that some BCB, we're also have been funding some contracted RBTs or registered behavioral therapists in there, as well as some one-time expenses like equipment, like professional development directly related to special education or the needs we're seeing. And something Mrs. Fox and I do every year is we do a needs assessment as well as a maintenance of equity for this grant to prove that we're spending at least as much as we spent the year before. And what are the needs of the district and the needs of our student population? And we have to directly tie those goals to the expenditures that we make.
And the federal government determines exactly how much we get of this grant every year. Are there other criteria involved in making a determination of how much we get?
No, not our student population in terms of our number of IEPs, our special ed population, has bearing on it, but we've been in the $600,000 to $700,000 range for the last 5 years. So I don't see that changing much. But what's happening is our salaries, as Dr. Carnello said, are get to a point where they may outpace what we have, limiting what we can put in the grant every year.
Great. Thank you so much for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Generally speaking, it is how our population, the number of students with services, but also, as with most other grants, part of it is reliant upon ability to pay and so forth so there are districts that get significantly more in this area than we do. Okay, if you could keep moving for me, Christine, thank you. We talked a little bit in the workshop about the things that we are doing that are continuing toward the goals. I think someone referred to them as, maybe it was Ramesh, about enhancements, so to speak. How we talked a lot about what we are doing because we need to, our student needs have changed, and we're looking to reallocate funds or to make reductions where we could to make room for some of the pieces that we absolutely need to move forward, like the fixed costs that you saw. But that said, from the educational standpoint and school climate standpoint, what are we doing to continue to move the district forward? What are some ways that we could point that out? This are just a few of the ways that I thought might help to put that into perspective. So the library books that we discussed, that's $11,000 district-wide to add newer, more current books, high-interest books to libraries for our students. There's some music equipment that we have put into this budget. Our reading program materials, as you know, that reading waiver or not, some of what we are moving forward with, that is grant money, that is the Right to Read Act money that you see there for the $99,000. Our math program materials, we have a pilot going at present that has been a huge piece of our work. We started with reading and writing, in other words, ELA, some years ago, and not going to get into that conversation right now, where we've moved forward with that and where we are versus having to maybe take a step back with some of the state mandates at present. But we had done much work related to ELA. We had started to be able to turn our focus a little bit more toward math. That's where this math program research came in, and pilot materials, and we do still plan to move that ahead. Our teachers have been asking for that for years. We know that we need to do that as a district, and we need to make sure that we have the resources in place to do that after all of the work that has gone into that. So that we are estimating right now about $216,000 from grant funds to go toward that. We discussed that at the workshop also. And we talked a little bit about the technology education programming, the CNC machine going through at the high school, for example, some items related to both that program and robotics and our middle school technology. And that approximately $50,000 is related to the grants that we had secured for the CNC machine, grants from the Avon Education Foundation, and also from the PTO. So all of the things on this screen are ways that we are consistently moving the district forward in terms of student learning. But as you can see on the bottom, these are all we made these work with no increase to the general fund. Between donations and us trying to make reductions in other places or reallocations of funding to be able to move these forward, we actually are at a decrease, as you know, in the supply lines, instructional supplies, and so on. So I think there's something to be said for how diligently, again, thank you, Deb, for bringing it up again for us, the administrators and the Board of Ed have worked together to be able to move this kind of programming forward without an increase to the general fund.
I did see Lynn.
Yeah. I think I should know this, but what grade levels will the new math program be serving in the
K to
fall?
6.
I'm sorry.
K to 6.
Next year, K through 6?
No.
K5,
No,
K5.
I'm sorry, K5, that's actually a typo. K5, thank you, I'm reading it off the screen, K5. And no, not next year. We are stepping this in, Lynn. We are in the middle of the pilot right now and doing some school visits.
Okay, but
Thanks,
next,
Jess.
so that money, the 216 might purchase enough for 1 grade level, 2 grade levels. What are we thinking?
Jess, do you want to speak to this? It's actually more than this. It's actually more like 236,000, if I remember right, Susan, correct? But from the grant funding, we're
Sorry,
looking
yes.
to spend next year 216, am I right?
We're anticipating in open choice funds, 216,000 that we can apply towards this. And I'm still working with Jess and Jody and their team to figure out really what the final budget Terry number from the manufacturer is, the publisher.
And from a grade level perspective, Jess?
It would be a K5 implementation.
All in 1 year, K5. Wow. That's impressive. I shocked.
Well, that's why we have the pilot going.
That's right. Yes, there's a lot of interest from our staff in
great.
adopting a math program. They're excited about it.
I am too.
They have not had one, so this has been a rallying cry from our faculty since I've been here. This was actually, I think I mentioned it previously, when we did the district review that the Board of Ed had budgeted for just before I was hired, and asked that it put it into the budget so that whomever the new superintendent was could have a review done of the district to start to develop this strategic plan. This was one of this and ELA were both areas that came out that needed the work that we've been doing. So we started, as I said, with the ELA, and we're now making our progress in math. And that came from our teachers and parents and students.
It's great. I expected it would take longer, so I'm thrilled to hear that.
Fingers crossed. Still moving forward. Okay, next slide, if you will, for me. Any other questions about that? Sorry, before I move on.
No, I think you're good.
Thank you. Focus area 2, personal growth and relationships. We talked quite a bit about this, the need for an additional social worker. We were asked by both schools for a social worker, and certainly recognize the need, and have been having those conversations with both PGS and RBS. In order to move the needle forward on this, as you know, we landed in putting one social worker in, and we will look to how that is split up. It's never ideal for any position to be split, to be perfectly honest, but especially one like this. And I know I talked about that already in the workshop, why that is, because student needs are what they are, and they, besides what's in a plan that a student might need counseling for, or a planned lesson, like the social emotional learning curriculum requirements, another thing that we've already started to implement, which is also state mandated. All best laid plans might not work when a social worker is needed to work with an individual student or a small group of students in the moment that something has happened, or that a child is really in need of in a stressful situation, in need of some counseling services, which is why we don't like to split the position. However, right now, from a budgetary standpoint, and being where we are with this increase, we are looking for one social worker to be added, and we will later figure out what that looks like as we review student needs again next year, and individualized education plans, 504 plans, and so on. And that represents 0.14 of the net increase. Go ahead, Christine. Just wanted to bring this up again because this is a position that we added in from ESSER grant funds, social worker at the high school. This person is already there. We discussed this at length before we did this last year. And this is the year that position has to move to our general budget because there are no more ESSER grant funds for it. Go ahead, Christine. We put in our unified sports program as a way to continue to meet the needs of our special education students. And we're very proud of the program and what we've been able to do with our students so far in basketball. And we had talked about this when we first put unified sports into the budget a few years ago. And here we are looking to expand the program again to include track and field. We have had some of our students with special needs also still able to run with our mainstream track and field team. However, there is still a need for a unified sports version of it. It's a small increase in the big grand scheme of things, but nonetheless, it is an increase. And this is for the coaching salaries, and these are related to our teacher contract, because generally speaking, they usually are our own faculty and or staff members, although sometimes we do have to hire from the outside. Nonetheless, our stipends for coaching are governed by contract. So this is the dollar amount for the head coach and the assistant coach. In the systems, we talked a little bit already about the fact that some of our utilities have actually decreased. On the flip side of that, we, as a result of our conversation at our last meeting, finally were able to support adding an additional custodian in. Again, this is a split position between the two elementary schools. I appreciate the conversation that we had with the board last time. This has been in the budget, this position, and cut out of the budget every year since I think before my time here, actually, and it obviously including every year that I've been here, as we move forward and tried to figure out where to prioritize, we have continually not moved this forward. And I think we are at a place where it's very important that we do it. So I'm glad we're able to support it. As a result of the last meeting, we went back into the budget and we reduced some of the overtime lines from the facilities budget, and also some of the not the supply lines, Susan. Why is it? It's right on the tip of my tongue. We just finished this afternoon. You'd think it'd be the freshest thing in my mind. We reduced. Go ahead.
Hesitating as well, but Miles and I worked together to comb through his budget one more time and taking into account that if we were to hire another custodian, where could we
contracted services
reallocate some funds?
Thank you. We reduced contracted services. It came to me all of a sudden, Susan, and the overtime lines, because now with an additional person in place, we should be able to realize some savings in both of those areas. So actually adding in the custodian is not impacting the budget very much. And when you look at overall the utilities being lower, we're actually in a decrease in the systems end for these two. Back to the health insurance, just a little bit again of an explanation of where we are. The utilization's been higher than anticipated. To fully fund it, the 5-year model this year calls for a 4.2% increase. We have seen some favorable fund growth in pension and OPEB and decreased contribution requirements. So that's helpful to us in reducing some of the impact. But again, on the other hand, we have, as you saw early on in the fixed costs, we have increased premiums and contractual obligations in pretty much every other benefit and using the term benefit loosely that is offered, because from a financial standpoint, all of these pieces fall into benefits, including even Social Security premiums, but they are required on our part. Annuities, retirement, so forth. Any questions there? And again, that's just breaking it out, right? Because on the first slide where it's fixed costs and it's that 2.74% overall increase, there's other pieces that are in there, including special education tuition, special education equipment, special education transportation. Here, wanted you to see the benefit piece alone is 1.5%, 6%. Well, out of the gate, the budget would be increased by that much, only by what's on the screen. Go to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. Communication and partnerships. That's back to our transportation. Just wanted to break it out. Our regular transportation, we have a contractual rate increase of 1.41%. That's because we negotiated a very good contract with specialty to see that small increase again this year. But then on the flip side of that, we do have many new increases in special education transportation. We have more students that require services, which leads to additional routes, vehicles, wheelchair vehicles, some door-to-door transportation, and again, additional students needing transportation to our extended school year in the summer and outplacement schools. And so again, just this transportation increase represents 0.55% of an overall increase on the budget. This isn't the transportation 0.55 increase. This is 0.55% of the budget is here. That's about a 0.5% increase in front of us on the overall budget. So again, this is where we started. We land here again and pause and see if you have any other questions. Let me go back to anything. I have some things broken. Susan and I work together, have some pieces broken down in different ways. If there's specific questions on anything else that we haven't talked about in the nights leading up to tonight or tonight. I go to the next slide for me, Christine, while we updated our pictures. I don't see any questions, Deb. I can't see everyone on the screen though.
Nope, I don't see any questions either. I think we're all just incredibly impressed and grateful for how well you do this particular aspect of your job. It's just enormous, and just you're so clear, and so it makes it easier for us to be able to talk about it if people have questions for us as well. So seeing that there aren't any questions, I'm going to extend the opportunity to Lynn, since she has served as our Finance Committee Chair, if you would like to make the motion. You are muted.
I'll get there one day. Okay, yeah, I would like to make a motion to pass the budget as presented and updated tonight.
And Jeff, you want to second it?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Counting 9 hands. Excellent. So now that becomes the Board of Education's budget for the school year of 24-25. So thank you again, everybody, for that hard work. Thank you, Dr. Carnamola.
Thank
really
you.
impressive.
Thank
Thank you to all the administrators that join us for this, because we know you have such a stake in this as well. So to be here with us during all of it, we really do value your input and your time.
Yes, likewise, I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So now our final new business item, I would actually like to make a motion to table the appointment of our, I'm going to say the correct term because we should fix this for next time, PAC-TAC Advisory Council member. We'll just move it to our February meeting. Do I have a second for that?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jeff. All in favor? Aye, and that passes unanimously. Excellent. So now we are on to communication from the public again. Christine, did anybody sign up?
There was someone who had a question. I don't know if she's still here, still has the question. She wrote the question to me in chat.
Okay. I mean, I guess what we definitely, let's share that question with Dr. Carnamola, because we wouldn't be able to respond during public comment. Dr. Carnamola, should we read it into the record, or do you just want to follow up?
Well, sometimes it's odd when we're virtual and folks may not necessarily know how to ask it. Do you have the name of the person, Christine? Is this person still here?
Mm-hmm.
Who is it?
Tammy Lockwood.
I guess let's just, Deb, is it okay? Let's just ask Tammy, do you want to speak, or do you want me to look at your question and get back to you? I know Tammy, so.
Okay.
Is she still here?
Yes. Is she able to unmute herself, or do you have to unmute her? Or if you'd like, you can just put in the chat.
She just told me she's good now.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm good now.
All right. So that's fine, Christine, since she doesn't want to speak, that's okay. I'll touch base anyway, and you can let me know. Well,
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right, so now we have communication from Avon Board of Education members. Just before anyone else speaks, I would be remiss if I didn't take the time to also acknowledge that Sarah is back with us on the board. And I'm so sorry that I didn't say your name earlier, but I absolutely am grateful that you ran for this position and that we have you back on the team. It feels like you've been a part of us for so long, but I want to acknowledge that every single one of us is a part of this team, and that's how we move forward. So Sarah, thank you and congratulations to you on your win as well.
Thanks, Deb.
Anyone else that would like to speak? Lynn, go ahead.
Just, I want to reiterate a welcome to all the new board members. I already love working with you. You're so engaged, and your questions, whether you know it or not, help the rest of us who have the same questions but don't want to hog the floor. So thank you for asking all your great questions, and I'm looking forward to working with you as a great team. Thank you.
Suzanne? I saw you unmute, I assumed. Am I wrong? Okay, Nicole, I see your hand. Go for it.
A couple. One thing, I had the great privilege of going to the middle school's chorus concert in December, which I'm always amazed by the talent that the Avon Public School students have, and the teachers, the faculty, and staff that work with them to get that. And I'm looking forward to seeing the other concerts and performances as spring comes. Also, regarding the budget, thank you everybody for your hard work. I know that this is not a number that we're necessarily happy looking at, but I do believe that it is in the best interests of the students. Moving forward, as I've said, I would love to see the expansion of an SRO officer. If we can work, on that and getting that in. And also hoping that, we can get some more state funding for things that come up in grants. So, thank you everyone for your hard work.
Thank you, Nicole. Anyone else?
Actually, yes.
Suzanne, go for
I
it.
would say I'm very impressed with the whole process that we went through with the budget. And thank you, Dr. Conamala. That was amazing. And Susan as well. And I do think that it's important that the budget reflects our values and our mission as a school district. And I feel really good that this is what we have here. So I just wanted to thank everybody for that.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Does someone want to make the motion to adjourn? Chris, go for it. Okay. I have a motion by Chris. Do I have a second? Second by Sarah. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously at 8:43, Christine. All right. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. Stay safe.